Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. If you are tuning in for the first time, then welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're all having a beautiful week. I know this episode is coming to you slightly later than usual. I did record this episode on Sunday. After I finished recording, I was like, it is my best episode yet. I'm in my flow. It's on the fly. I was really getting into it. And then when I went to edit it, it was really quiet, like the recording. I don't know why. So anyway, I decided that I would re-record. The days after that were a bit busy, and then I was traveling. And today, actually just a few hours ago, I arrived in Brisbane. This is how determined I am to get this episode out to you guys. But yeah, I'm in Brisbane for the rest of the month. I actually got this amazing house sitting opportunity, and I'm the type of person who works well and becomes really creative in different spaces, different environments. And I have the privilege to be able to travel. I'm so grateful that I've created a career and a job where I have this flexibility because it's so important to me. So I'm just feeling really grateful in this beautiful space. And I can say with certainty that I did manifest this opportunity. At the start of the year, I was speaking into existence a winter break, and I was scripting it. I was visualizing it. It just happened. And I do believe we all have this power to manifest. I'm actually going to get my friend Libby on next week, and we're going to talk about the concept of manifesting and creating your life and the neuroscience behind that. So I'm here. I'm ready to get back into it, record a second time around. Today, this episode is going to be on turning your pain into your power. It's not going to be an episode where I sit here and tell you that everything happens for a reason. I think that's a bit of a flyaway comment, to be honest, but I do believe that through our individual challenges, through our painful experiences, we have this opportunity to grow and evolve. And we have this opportunity to find our personal power. You know, we all are going to navigate painful experiences, whether it be health issues, relationships ending, job loss, family issues. And I know that when we're in the midst of challenges, we are so in the thick of it that it's hard to see the other side. It's hard to imagine what the possibilities are. So I hope this episode is a bit of a pep talk, especially for you if you're going through something challenging right now. The things I'll be sharing, a lot of them you will already intuitively know, and this will just be a reminder for you of your own power. Because I believe that pain is such a teacher, such a catalyst, if we allow it to be. Before we start, I want to make this distinction between pain and challenges, which we all navigate, and the definition or the concept of trauma, because there's a lot of talk around trauma at the moment. Big T trauma, meaning major trauma, what would be considered as big trauma, or little t trauma. And trauma is actually not necessarily what we think it is. So it's not an event or an experience that somebody goes through specifically. It's actually the way that the nervous system and the brain responds to the event or experience. Because two people can go through the exact same thing and only one person may be left traumatized due to different factors. So some factors might include whether that person had any power over what was happening and how they responded, whether they were able to release the fight, flight, or freeze response when it was needed, whether they had a safe place or a person to go to during or after the experience, or whether they felt supported in the way that they needed after an experience or an event. So I really want to make that distinction. There's pain, there's challenges, and for some people, there is trauma. Well, actually for a lot of us, to be honest. And trauma is not just the big things. It's, again, the way the nervous system responds. And when we're dealing with trauma, it can just take some more support and some more time to move through. This episode will be really relevant to all challenges, all pain, all trauma. because even when we're talking about trauma, there is something called post-traumatic growth, which is really the same as turning your pain into your power and growing on the other side. So as I was saying before, painful experiences, challenges, they are universal. Nobody is getting out of this life unscathed. Yes, some people may go through more challenges than others, but ultimately we are all going to go through it at some point in our life. What I think can really happen is we can get stuck in our painful experiences. And I can explain this a little bit from a neuroscience perspective. So our brain, as I've said before, its job is to keep us safe. Its job is to make things easy for us. And its job is to protect us. So if we go through a painful experience that has a big impact on our life, what can happen is our brain starts to use that event or that memory as a way to predict the future. It starts sort of projecting that feeling, that experience into the future. And therefore, we experience anxiety and fear about the future because we think the future is going to be like the past. But what can happen if we're constantly projecting the future in a fearful way, it changes the chemistry of our nervous system as well, changes the hormones, and we get really stuck. On top of that, we start to attach these stories, the narratives, I'll never be the same. I'll never be happy again. My life changed after this experience. This is always going to happen to me. I never catch a break. All of these things we start to tell ourselves and we start to share in the way we tell our stories. And I want to say something on this, and I want you to sit on it and think about it. A lot of stress actually comes from the story that you have assigned meaning to about a particular situation. It's not the situation itself, it's the story that you keep telling yourself about the situation that causes a lot of the mental and physical stress. And if we're telling these stories about painful experiences in the past and we carry this into the future, then we stop trusting in life. And we stop living life to the fullest. When I talk about this concept, turning your pain into your power, it's not about you just pushing through the pain and thinking positive and then stepping into this bright future. No, it's about acknowledging pain, but not getting stuck in it and being able to find your personal strength on the other side of it. So I'm not going to use this episode too much to talk about my own experience because I have shared that. And if you want to listen to things I've navigated and how I've done it, go all the way back to the start of this podcast. But I will say I am very familiar with that concept. When it rains, it pours. There were moments in my life where I didn't know how I would even make it through the next day, let alone turn my pain into power. But on reflection, I know and I can see now that every experience I have gone through, every emotion I've gone through, has led me to be exactly who I am today. And I can hand on heart say that the difficult experiences that I've moved through to date have given me more inner strength and more power and more knowledge on myself than any of the times in my life that have been smooth sailing. And I believe that we all have this inner resilience, this inner capability to move through so much more than we think we can, and come out the other side, evolve out the other side even greater. A quote that always stuck with me is, if you have breath, you have options. Meaning, as long as you are alive, as long as you're here, you have choices. And our choices will determine how we move through something. So for the rest of the episode, I'm going to share some practical tips that you can implement if you want to feel empowered as you move through a challenge or you move through a painful experience. And then I'm going to share some positive qualities that I think we gain as we evolve out the other side of our pain, because this will get you thinking. And, I do believe that there are some qualities that can only really be forged, that can only be strengthened in the midst of challenges. So we'll start with the practical tips first. So number one, educating yourself on how you can support your nervous system and educating yourself on how you can create a supportive environment. So around the nervous system first, it's just really reassuring to know that if we're going through a challenging time, your nervous system may require extra rest. You may want to change the way that you're moving. I guess it's about understanding that life works in seasons. And one thing that I've really reflected on as I've moved through challenges is that I've had to adapt the way that I show up in different seasons. If I'm going through something really difficult, I'll just focus on the basics. And if I'm in a season where I can be more productive, then I will up the ante a little bit. But it's about having that self-compassion and knowing that if you're moving through a difficult time, you've got to give yourself some grace. And if we do understand the nervous system, we can go all the way back to episode, I think, 3, where I talk about the nervous system. It's just nice to know that a lot of the ways that the nervous system is responding are very normal and natural, and we can work with that in supportive ways. In terms of having a supportive environment to help support you and your nervous system, it's things like making sure that you have spaces where you can feel calm and centered. It could be making sure that you really prioritize clean spaces, because we know that when our spaces are clean, we can feel more mentally ordered as well. Another example of cultivating a supportive environment is making sure we are being around people where we feel like we can just be ourselves, where we don't have to put on a mask, where we can show up. If we choose, we can open up, and that is really good for the nervous system. And it's really important as we navigate change that we have that sort of support around us. Alternatively, you may just want spaces where you can process and move through your own emotions. That may be having spaces for movement, that may be having spaces for journaling, that may be having spaces where you can sit with your emotion and move through it. Because it's a bit like if you put a lid on a boiling pot, eventually the contents in the pot will rise to the top and spill over. And human emotions are no different. If we continue to push our feelings down and down and down and try and avoid them, eventually they will explode over more fiercely than before. So creating a supportive environment and just understanding the nervous system and how you can support yourself is really important. So number 2, the next thing that you can do as you move through a challenge is stop asking, why is this happening to me? And instead ask, what is this experience teaching me? Or what am I learning from this experience? The reason why I say this is because when we are asking why me, why is this happening to me? We have to mentally go back into the past and look for reasons. We're trying to piece the puzzle together. And sometimes life just happens. There's no reason for it. And the why, it takes up so much of our mental energy. So when we shift this to what is this teaching me, or what am I learning from this, it feels more empowering. I think the hardest part of moving through painful experiences is coming to some kind of acceptance of what is. But I really think when we can get to that point where we accept what is, and then we look at what we can take from this experience, that is when we feel the most empowered. Don't get me wrong, if you're navigating something difficult and it's fresh and it's new, it's okay to dip into the why. We all go into like, why me? Feel sorry for ourselves, try and look for answers, but we cannot stay in that place if we want to move forward. At some point, we have to reflect on what this experience is here to teach us. And actually, while I'm speaking on this, another shift that was really powerful for me, instead of asking why me, again, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself, why not me? I think sometimes we have this perception that all of these difficult things happen to everyone else outside of us. And when they happen to us, it's quite hard to believe. But we're all human. We're all going to go through it. So when you say, why not me, you can actually see that this is a shared experience by other people. And in that, you might feel a sense of, if that person can get through it, I can get through it too. And again, it just takes that focus away from the past and feeling sorry for ourselves and feeling like a victim into a state that is more empowered. Number 3, if you're moving through a challenging time or a painful experience, on the days where it feels like all too much and you're in the thick of it and you're in the uncertainty and you're doubting everything, They are the days where you need to remind yourself how far you've come. They are the days where you need to write down what you've already achieved, what steps you've already taken forward, or you need to speak it out loud, or tell a friend, or remind yourself. But they are the days where it's really important to acknowledge how far you've come so your brain can find evidence of what has already shifted. For example, I'll give you an example. As a business owner, those days that are really hard and you're questioning when your next pay's coming in, your next clients, you're wearing all the hats, and you have those moments of, oh, this is really challenging. On those days, I remind myself of all of the clients that I have already supported. I remind myself of the confidence that I have built after years of being in business. I just remind myself of all of these things that day to day, sometimes I forget, and I really need to connect to that. And even further than that, on those really difficult days, connect to your why. Connect to why and your motivation for moving through a challenge or a painful experience. For example, your why might be for your kids. It might be for your family. Your why might be a mission that you really feel drawn to fulfill. Your why might be a financial goal. Your why might be so that you can help others that were once going through the same pain and experience as you. When we can remember these things, they help ground us and they help us see the future possibilities, which is really important when we are in the midst of challenging times. And the last thing that you can do is focus on what you have in that moment rather than what you've lost. And this is really important because it connects us back into that state of gratitude, and gratitude brings us into the present moment, again, taking us out of putting all of our mental energy into the past. So how this can look is writing down 3 things that you are grateful for every day, morning or night, or speaking out loud 3 things you are grateful for before your head hits the pillow. And these things can be really simple. It can be, I'm grateful for a sunny day. I'm grateful that I'm still alive today. I'm grateful that I can move my body. It doesn't have to be anything extreme. It's just about connecting to what we do have and putting our energy there. And that is really going to strengthen those pathways, those neural pathways for gratitude through something called neuroplasticity. And over time, it becomes easier for our brain to habitually focus on what we have rather than what we don't have. Okay, guys, I've given you some practical tips. Now I'm going to share what positive qualities you can gain as you move through your pain and turn your pain into power. Number 1, you develop more empathy and understanding. I really want you to think about this one. Think about your own personal challenges, the ones that you've navigated through, and think about the fact that you can relate to others that are going through that same thing far greater than somebody else because you have gone through it. You have developed that empathy because you know what it's like to go through something similar. So our range of emotions can increase on the other side of pain. This has very much been my experience, yes, with chronic illness, because this is why I find it very easy to do the work I do. But particularly with grief, I would say before experiencing grief, I would liken it to being able to tune into just a few different radio stations. And then on the other side, after experiencing loss, it's like I can tune into more radio stations because of the breadth of emotions and feelings I had to experience. And something I want to remind you is that that's not necessarily a bad thing, because how do we know joy if we don't know sadness? How do we know what inner peace feels like if we haven't had to struggle? So if we come back to that concept around painful experiences and challenges, they are widening the breadth of your emotions so that when good stuff comes in, you'll feel it even more. You'll really connect to it even more. And I think that's important, because if we went through life without any challenges, we wouldn't appreciate anything. We would have no sense of gratitude, and it would be pretty boring, to be honest. I also think pain can force us to be better communicators and more vulnerable in our relationships, which just leads to better relationships in general and more intimacy. Because if we're moving through a really challenging time, sometimes we just want to be real. We don't have the energy for anything else. So it requires us to get more honest with ourselves and honest with others around us. And that is the foundation of intimacy. So yes, if we allow it to, pain can help us in our relationships. The second thing you gain as you come out the other side of painful experiences and challenges, you get to reevaluate your value system. Pain often shifts our perspective and helps us prioritize what is really important in life. We can start to ask ourselves those questions that perhaps we haven't been considering. What is important to me? What do I now want to believe in? What is non-negotiable for me now? I'll use myself as an example. So as I've moved through life, one value that's really become apparent and important to me is freedom. And that is freedom to be myself fully, because I understand life is short and I want to be able to express who I am and be true to who I am. And also freedom with my time and energy, which is ultimately a privilege to have. So do I currently own a house? No. Do I currently have a partner? No. Do I currently have a fancy car? No. If you guys have seen my car, it's not a fancy one. Am I happy? Yes. Generally speaking, most of the time, I'm pretty happy and at ease in myself, because I'm living a life that at the moment is really aligned with my value system. But my value system has shifted over time. The things that I prioritize now are not the same as even 5 years ago. And that has only come about because as I've moved through pain and challenges, I have really taken the time to think about what is important to me and how I want to live my life and what choices I can make that are aligned with those values. That's not to say everything's perfect. That's not to say things will change, but it's about allowing yourself to consciously say, this has happened. How do I want to move forward? How do I want to live my life? What values do I want? What beliefs do I want from here? And from this place, we can make those conscious choices. I see this a lot with my clients as well. A lot of them, to get their health back, they have to start shifting their internal belief system, because a lot of people realize if I continue to suppress my emotions, if I continue to talk to myself negatively, if I continue to overwork, this is going to impact my health. So the painful experience of having a chronic illness forces people to shift their value system. The next positive thing that can happen as you turn your pain into power is you can become more comfortable with the unknown, sitting in that space of not knowing how things are going to happen next, sitting in that space of not gripping too tightly to controlling outcomes. And this is because pain often forces us to adapt to new circumstances. We are learning flexibility and adaptability. We don't always want to learn it, but it forces us to learn it. So then we can practice living in this space where we don't have all the answers, where we have been sort of thrown into the unknown. That can actually be really healthy because it teaches us to flow with life rather than resist and control. And to get into this space, all we really need to do is just consistently remind us what we have influence over, or what we have control over, and what we don't have control over. Because ultimately, all we can control at our individual level is our responses, our reactions, our behaviors. And there is a lot of things that happen in life that are out of our control. So it's about knowing with that information where we can put our energy, which really needs to be focused mainly on us, and focusing on that rather than trying to control all of these outcomes, all of these people, all of these situations outside of us. Finally, the last thing that we definitely gain as we turn our pain into power is personal strength and resilience. Knowing that every time you take a step forward through something challenging, every time you focus your energy into the future and the possibilities and what you have learnt and what you have overcome, you are building your resilience and your personal strength. I want to remind you as well that as one door closes, another door opens. And I think one of the most courageous things we can do in this lifetime is to keep our heart open or to practice keeping our heart open despite the many good reasons that we may have to close it off, and keep doing you, keep moving forward and keep growing. So thank you again for tuning in to another episode. Please take the time to share this to those that may need to hear it. Please take time to rate this podcast if you haven't already done so. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.